Hello everyone. How's it going? Azran here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's Learn Gujarati with me podcast episode and of course video. If you're listening to this only as a podcast, as audio, there is a video version of every single podcast on YouTube. Simply search Learn Gujarati with me on YouTube and you'll find the video where I'm sharing a whiteboard or some kind of visual to support the lesson. There's also a video version on podcast. Once or twice, there have been some glitches where the video wasn't uploading, so there's only audio. So the video is always on YouTube, usually on Spotify. Okay, so today we're going to talk about something called, let's write it on the screen here. We're going to learn about, oh, what happened there? I deleted the whole thing by mistake. Let's do that again. We're going to learn about the imperfect tense. So we have another grammar video today. We're going to be focused a little bit on grammar for the next little while, but we will do some non-grammar topics too in the lessons to come. So the imperfect tense, this builds really nicely off of the simple past tense we did about 2 or 3 lessons ago. Okay, so what's our plan for today? We're going to do a very quick, really quick, I promise it'll be fast, a super quick recap of the simple simple past tense. Because the simple past tense and the imperfect tense, in a way, they go hand in hand. We'll look at when to use the imperfect tense, when to use the imperfect. We're going to look at the conjugation rules. And then I'll give you some exercises to practice. Exercises to practice. Okay, so we'll review the simple past tense very quickly. We'll go through when to use the imperfect tense. We'll look at the conjugation rules for the imperfect tense, and then I'll give you some exercises to practice. Okay, so let's start with our very quick review of the simple past tense. Okay, now I'll just explain this to you orally. There are primarily two past tenses in Gujarati. One of them is the simple past. The other one is the imperfect, which we're going to do. The simple past tense is a past tense we use to describe things that happened, essentially that happened once. It happened one time. So like if I woke up at 9 a.m. today, I woke up once. I didn't wake up repeatedly or multiple times. I woke up once. Or if I went to France in 2019, well, I went once in 2019. So the simple past, I have a whole video on this, but basically it's for completed actions. Completed actions. Often we'll know when they happened. In the sentence itself, we'll be told, oh, this happened in 2019. This happened last week. There's a time word that tells us when the completed action happened. Yeah, we're told when the action happened. Okay. Now, the thing about the past tense, though, is that that's not the only type of past tense we have. So I'll give you an example, just a very simple English example. If I told you in English, I used to eat meat. I used to eat meat. Well, the thing about that is it's not really a thing that happened once. Like typically the simple past tense ones, they're things that happened once, happened one time. But if I said I used to eat meat, that's not something that happened one time, right? Or looking from the perspective of an English learner, if you were learning English, right? Let me erase this. Let me erase this as well, right? If you were an English learner, right, you would learn that the simple past tense, typically your verb will end. If you look at the conjugation rule of the simple past tense in English, right, usually verbs end in ed. So for example, right, a word like I walked, right, that ends in an ed at the end. But we also have other past tense forms of walk, like I used to walk. Or maybe I was walking, right? These two, I used to walk and I was walking, they also happened in the past, but it's not the same past. It's not the same meaning as this one here. So in short, what I'm trying to say is that the simple past tense is one past tense we have in Gujarati and many languages, not just Gujarati. But it's not the only one. And so today we're going to learn about the other past tense. Again, there are two major past tenses in Gujarati. One is the simple past, which we've talked a little bit about, and I have a whole video on it. I'm going to put a check mark here. The second one is the imperfect. Okay, now, when do we use the imperfect? Well, the imperfect tense, when do we use it? We use it in a few different circumstances. I'm going to explain it in a couple of different ways because different ways tend to make sense to different people. So one way to view it is, or rather, yes, one way to view it is to view it through rules, right? So there's three different circumstances where we use the imperfect past. One is for actions that were happening in the past. Actions that were happening in the past. Keyword here, were happening, right? See that were, like the ing on happening, like that's important. That's important. So one time we use the imperfect past is when you have a verb that has an ing, right? So I was walking. You were doing. We were studying. This is what was happening. So we have these, we either have, we put this here, right? We're going to have was happening. So was, I'm going to say verbing, was verbing, walking, talking, swimming, sleeping, etc. Right? You might get a were. Oh, I just noticed I spelled worf. I just spelled were wrong the first time. There we go. It's not W-E apostrophe. Oh my God, that's so silly. Were like this. There. I spelled were wrong the first time. There we go. Right, that were verbing. These are the two options. So was verbing or were verbing. Was walking, was talking, was swimming, was sitting, were opening, you were cleaning, you were fixing, so on and so forth. So that's the first circumstance, things that were happening in the past. Another way to view this, it's the same concept, just different words to explain the same thing. You could also view this as, I'll use a different color, right? Actions that are, let's use were in progress. Right, so they were in progress. They were happening. It was in the midst of happening. It's definitely not complete. Another time we use the imperfect tense in Gujarati is for actions that happened repeatedly. In the past. Actions that happened repeatedly in the past. So with these actions that happen repeatedly in the past, there's a few ways to view it. If you were to look at it through the lens of English, they're usually going to translate to used to. things you used to do, but you don't do anymore. Another way to view it is things that you would do in the past, but you don't do anymore. So, for example, I would visit my grandma, but actually, that sounds very mean, but maybe I could say, I would visit my grandma every single day of the week before, but now I don't. I would, I would drive to work every day, but now I take the bus. I would, so things you would do before, but you don't do anymore. Would and used to, they're often synonyms. For example, I would visit my grandma every week, and I used to visit my grandma every week. It's kind of the same meaning, even though it's different words, right? So would do or used to do, these are two, if you're to translate the imperfect to English, it often translates to a used to or a would. Another way to view this, I'll just give a visual way to view this in case you're a more visual learner. This is a timeline right here. Things that happen repeatedly, if this is, let's say, well, I'll just draw it like this actually, right? Each one of these lines I'm drawing is when you did something. So maybe you like, I don't know, visited your grandma. I always use that example for some reason. Visited grandma, right? You visited grandma once, right? Then that maybe it was Monday, right? Then you did it another Monday, right? The next Monday you did it again, right? Next Monday you did it again. Next Monday you did it again. Next Monday you did it. So things that repeated, right? Things that repeat in a loop over and over and over and over, and we don't really know when it ended, right? We don't really know when it ended. It wasn't like, oh, I did it 3 times. It's like, no, I did it. I used to visit, but I don't tell you how many times. I don't know when that started and ended. With things that happen repeatedly in the past, you're often going to notice there's no start or end date. There's no start or end date. So, for example, if I said, I used to eat meat, but now I don't. Or even just quite simply, I used to eat meat. You don't know when I started eating meat, and you don't know when I stopped eating meat. You don't know. I used to eat meat, meaning on a regular basis, I ate meat. But maybe I used to eat meat only for a year. Like maybe I did it for 2 years and I stopped. Like you have no idea. There's no start or end date. Okay. The third time we use the imperfect tense in Gujarati is for general truths or facts in the past. Okay. General truths or facts in the past. So what does that mean? I mean, that can present itself in many different ways. I'll give you some examples. So you could say, for example, my house was red. My house was red. That's true. It's a fact. Uh, it's not true anymore, but it was true, right? It used to be true. Sometimes for these general truths, we can use used to as well. Sometimes. Like my house used to be red. That's kind of a general truth or a fact, right? My house was red. Like another example. The cat. I don't know why this came to mind. The cat was fat. The cat was fat. Again, notice, just like up here, right? And actually, for all of them, really, actually, for all of them, and for every single, really, any of these three circumstances, one thing you'll notice is that there is no start or end date for any of these past sentences in any of the three categories. Actions that were happening in the past, like I was walking. We don't know when I was walking. Like we don't really know, right? Um, we don't really know when it was happening, but yeah, I was doing it, right? Or I used to do something. We don't know. There's no start date or end date. We don't really know, right? Same here. The cat was fat. We know he used to be fat. He was fat in the past. We don't know when. Could have been 5 minutes ago, and then he's not, or an hour ago, or 5 years ago. Like we have no idea. Okay. Often these general truths or facts in the past, more often than not, maybe always, but let's just say more often than not, in case I'm missing something, they're going to be descriptions. Right? They're going to be descriptions. So if you're reading like again, there's lots of ways to view this. I'll try to explain different terms to help give different visuals and different people that understand things in different ways. Um, like I'm just going to look out, I have a window in front of me. I'm just going to describe what I see. Okay. But let's pretend I'm describing this in the past, like not literally right now, but let's say I'm telling you a story based on what I'm seeing outside. Um, I might say the snow was melting, a slight breeze was blowing the trees side to side. The sun was shining. It's not really shining, but let's say it was. The sun was shining. It was warm, and mm, all was at peace. Right? That's all an imperfect tense. We're describing a scene, right? It's a description. So this imperfect tense, it's a little bit trickier to grasp mentally because we don't really have a direct equivalent in English. We don't have like a very simple direct correlation. Many languages do. And so what might be helpful, this is a bit of a hack, um, because other languages have this imperfect. In fact, even this term imperfect tense, I don't even know if it comes from teaching English. I've borrowed it from a different language. I've borrowed it from French and Spanish because French and Spanish have this exact concept. And I'm sure other languages do too. But if you're really kind of struggling to wrap your head around what this is, what I would do is like just a little pro tip. Maybe I'll write pro tip on the screen. Let's use red for it. Right, pro tip, if you're still struggling to grasp it, search on YouTube. Search on YouTube or Google, really, Google or YouTube. Or even you can even search on all sorts. You can search really on social media platforms too. I know some people do that. Right? Some people actually Instagram search. That becomes their Google. They Google on Instagram or TikTok or whatever instead of on Google, right? Right, social media. So you're going to search wherever you search, right? I want you to search preterite versus imperfect Spanish. There are hundreds of videos and they all explain it kind of differently, but they'll explain the difference. If you're still struggling to understand what the difference is, search preterite versus imperfect Spanish. You can also do the same with French. If you search in French, passé composé versus imparfait. There are lots of videos with lots of people explaining it in different ways, and it's the exact same concept. This preterite in Gujarati is a simple past. This passé composé is also a simple past. So if you're watching a French language video and they're explaining the grammar point in French, when they talk about passé composé, basically that's our simple past. If you're watching a Spanish video and they call it preterite, preterite is the simple past we're talking about in Gujarati. Preterite is also called, in Spanish, it's called pretérito. Pretérito, in case they use that word, because they might say it in Spanish, not English. Pretérito. Okay. So that's that. That's when we use it. Okay. So general truths or facts in the past, actions that happened repeatedly in the past. Often we see used to or would do in these kinds of sentences. And then things that were happening. So actions that were in progress. We often have this was doing or were doing in those kinds of sentences. This is when we use the imperfect tense. Now, the imperfect tense, as I said before, is one of the two past tenses in Gujarati. Often, often they go hand in hand. Okay, actually, I'm not going to put this line here. I'm just going to add a little, I'll just keep going. Often they go hand in hand. So I'm not a really good drawer. I'm not good at drawing at all, but I'll draw it like this. I'll try my best. I'm really terrible. Like 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds draw better than me. No exaggeration. But let's pretend, okay, here is a stage. Okay, so all the spectators are here, right? These are all people's heads, right? Right, all the spectators are here. They're watching the stage, right? Some play is happening. And often, not always though, um, the imperfect tense and the simple past tense, um, there's really two ways that they can come together. One is that they actually play together, which is the analogy I'll explain in a second. Or two is you might just use you might use both in the same sentence, but there's no correlation. If there's no correlation, we'll leave that aside, but often they're correlated. And the way they're correlated is the imperfect sets the stage, right? It sets the stage. That's the description, right? There were trees everywhere, right? Here's a tree, right? There were trees everywhere. The sun was shining, right? There's our sun, right? There were clouds in the sky, right? There were clouds. Here's our clouds, right? There were clouds in the sky. Sun was shining. Trees were everywhere, right? Alice was walking, right? She's walking this way, right? These are all, it's setting the scene. Alice was walking. The sun was shining. Clouds are in the sky. Trees are everywhere, right? That's all, everything in black here, right? All the things in black in this box, that's all the imperfect. But then something happens, right? Then something happens. You know, lightning strikes Alice, and she gets superpowers, right? Those two lines, lightning strikes, that's what I've written in yellow. Lightning strikes, and then she gets superpowers. She gets super powers. So those two things in yellow, that would be considered the simple past tense. So again, I'm gonna write this on the screen here. Let me scroll down, create some space. I'm gonna type this just for time's sake. I'll just type it on the screen. The sun was shining. There were clouds in the sky. There was sun was shining. There were clouds in the sky. Trees were everywhere. Alice was walking, and suddenly she was struck by lightning. After this gave her superpowers. Superpowers. Is superpowers one word? I don't actually know. There we go. Okay, so here's an English little description. I'm gonna so notice everything in, let's use black. Actually, let's use blue. Everything in blue would be imperfect. The sun was shining. There were clouds in the sky. Trees were everywhere. Alice was walking. But then, right, so that's setting the scene. Okay, here's what's going on. That's setting the scene for what's happening, right? We have the scene. Oh, we understand now, right? But then she was struck by lightning, right? She was struck by lightning. This gave her superpowers, right? That struck by lightning and gave her superpowers. These are one-time things. Remember, the simple past is you. These are simple past, right? Yellow is simple past. Simple past. Blue is imperfect. For those watching the video, right? Blue is imperfect. The imperfect sets the scene. The simple past is what happens on the scene. Often it's going to be that way. Imperfect sets a scene, simple past is what happens. Imperfect sets a scene, simple past is what happens, right? Remember, simple past is things that happened. Often they happen once. It's a one and done. They're complete. So she's struck by lightning once, it's over, right? This gave her superpowers, great, it's over. It was the act of giving superpowers was a one-time thing, okay? So often the imperfect tense and the simple past, they go hand in hand because the imperfect sets the scene for something to then happen. And so the reason that both these past tense, one reason why both the imperfect and simple past are so important to understand and to practice is because when you're telling anecdotes in the past, this is good for intermediate speakers, really, to be honest. This might be a little bit beyond the beginners, but that's okay. When you're telling anecdotes in the past, you do, and you want to do a good job with it, you generally, often you're going to need both the imperfect tense and the simple past. Okay, so that's a lot of information on when to use it. Let's look at the conjugation rules. Let's go back up here. Let's check off when to use it. We've done that. Okay, we'll do conjugation rules, and I'll give you a bunch of exercises to practice. Okay. So if this is the very first video you're watching and you're like, what is a conjugation? I've talked about what they are before, but conjugations are changes in spelling. Changes in spelling and changes in pronunciation. We change the spelling and pronunciation of verbs depending on when the verb happens. If it happens in the present, we spell and say it one way. If it happened in the past, we spell and pronounce it a different way. Simple enough. Otherwise, we wouldn't know how to indicate. That's how we indicate if something happened in the past or present. Okay? Please go and watch some of the earlier videos and listen to the earlier podcasts if you're not familiar with conjugations, because I do talk about it quite a bit before this video here. Now, so we have our pronouns as always, right? So we have hum, we have tame, we have tu, we have e, we have, remember this, I'm not going to talk, we've talked about this before. Remember when we write, and a synonym for let's just say that a synonym for is te, just as a reminder. We've talked about this many times before. So synonym for is te. We have, I'm going to write loco. Remember that roughly speaking, teo is a synonym for loco. I say roughly speaking because loco has to be people, but teo can be animals, people, doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be people, but loco has to be people. And then we have ame and apne. Ame and apne. Okay? Quick recap. Hum is I. Tame is you, but formal. Tu is you, but informal. E is both he and she. E loco or teo is they. Ame and apne both mean we. Ame is exclusive. Apne is inclusive. So again, it just means that, again, very, very quickly, if I'm talking to you and telling you that me, so if here's you, right? This is you. And I tell you that, if I tell you that my friend and I, this is me, this is my friend. If I tell you that my friend and I, we went to the mall, but you did not go, I'm excluding you. You did not come with me, right? That's ame. But if all three of us, we went to the mall, I'm including you, that is apne. Very quick recap. We've talked about this many times before in previous videos. Okay, so that's ame and apne. Those are our pronouns. In the imperfect tense, we take our verb. Let's take the verb. I always often use the word chalvu. So let's stick with that verb. I'll write it maybe just down here in a different color. Let's use red. Right? The verb we're going to use is chalvu. Remember in Gujarati, all verbs in Gujarati end in vu. To conjugate them, we remove vu, we get rid of it, and we're going to add a different ending. So for all of them, for every single one of these, we are going to have chal, because chal, if you look down here, that's chal vu, the verb to walk without the vu. So we're going to have chal for all of them. Chal, chal, chal. Okay, there we go. Chal, 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 chal. And then we're going to have a different ending. Let's put the endings in red. So if I'm walking, we have hu, chal to, hato. If you're that's for boys, that's masculine. If you're a girl, it's going to be hu. Instead of chal to hato, chal ti. Let's use the same colors as before. Let's go back to that blue. If it's a girl, you're gonna have hu, chal, chal, ti, hati. And those are your two options. Hu chal to hato, hu chal ti hati. Hu chal ti hati is feminine for girls. So if you're a girl, you'll say that. Boys will say hu chal to hato. Tame, just one option. Chal ta hata. If it's tu, as in you informally, tu chal to hato for boys, masculine. For girls, we're going to have again tu chal ti. Oops, chal ti hati. That's feminine. Okay. So if you're talking to a boy, chal tu chal to hato. If you're talking to a girl, tu chal ti hati. He and she, we're gonna have three options. And the three options, just for time's sake, I'll number them off. Option one, e chal to hato. I just numbered it off, number one. That's for masculine. Option two, e chal ti hati. If it's a she that you're talking about. Option three, e chal ta hata. If the he or she you're talking about is you're trying to be more polite, right? So this is for masculine, this is for feminine, this is for polite. That's for the he and she, right? So we're gonna have, right? We have chalto, hato, right? Chalta, chalta, hata. Sorry, hati. We did hati second. Hati. And then chalta, hata. Again, that's masculine, feminine. This is polite. Okay. A local, we have, if we go over here, chal. Oop, let's use the color. Let's use the same colors. Chal, ta, hata. Right. I think there's a dialectal difference as well. I'm not sure about this, but I think some people, if the people you're referring to, the group of people, if they're all girls, then I think some people are going to say chalti hati. My family, I don't think we do that. And then people I've talked to generally, I don't think so. But I think that there might be a dialectal difference there. But we always just say chalta hata in my family. Last but not least, for ame and apre, we have chalta hata. So what do these translate to in English? Well, all of them, basically are going to translate to one of two things. There's two options for every single one. It's either was or were walking, or used to slash would. Remember, used to and would are kind of the same meaning. They're synonyms. Used to or would walk. These are roughly speaking your two translation options, right? So, હું ચાલતો તો, I was walking. તું ચાલતી તી, she was walking. એ ચાલતો તો, he was walking. Or, હું ચાલતો તો, I used to walk. તું ચાલતો તો, you used to walk. એ ચાલતો તો, he used to walk, so on and so forth. So the two options are was walking or used to walk for the most part. Okay. Yeah. Couple points about this here, about the conjugation rules. When people talk, almost everybody, if not everyone, what they're going to do is these hatos, all these ha, so let's just scroll down here. In the conjugations, we have hato, hati, hata. Right, this is for the masculine. This is for the feminine. This is for polite or plural. Right, we had those. I'll scroll back up so you can see it, right? Every single one had hato, hati, hata, hato, hati. They had one of those three, right, at the end. When people are talking, they're most likely going to drop the ha. So, hu chalto, to. Tu chalti, ti. Chalta, ta. Chalta, ta. Chalto, to. Karto, to. Karti, ti. Bolta, ta. Bolto, to. Not bolto, hato. Bolto, hata. Bolta, hata. Bolti, hati. More often than not, they drop. They don't pronounce the ha. And in fact, the ha letter in Gujarati, that letter, like that H sound, ha, is dropped in many words. In many, many, many words, that letter is dropped. It's pretty common, actually. Okay. I was going to say one more thing. What was I going to say? I was going to say something else here too. Yes. I don't know if this is dialectal or if this is everyone. I honestly don't know. But remember how we have different meanings here, right? If we scroll back up. Generally speaking, the English translations, right? The English translations of the imperfect tense, generally speaking, are going to be, right, these was verbings, or we're going to have used to or would do, right? These are kind of the English translations for the most part, right? For the most part, there are some exceptions, but generally that's what we're going to have, right? But, well, not but, if you're trying to say used to, okay, so if you're trying to say used to, I think it's not dialectal, but I'm pretty sure everyone, no matter where you're from in Gujarat, I'm pretty sure you have the option to get rid of your hato, hatis, and hatas. So if I want to say I used to walk, but I don't walk anymore, I could say હું ચાલતો, પણ હવે હું નથી ચાલતો. Right? હું ચાલતો, પણ હવે નહીં. I used to walk, but not anymore. Right? Now, could I keep the hato? Yeah, of course. How ચાલતો તો, but હવે નથી ચાલતો. Right? Like you could, right? You could still keep it, but please note that a lot of people will often drop this hato, hati, or hata in all of these, right? In every single one, right? This one, right? All these hatos, hatis, hatas, right? They're all going to be dropped. There we go. Right? They're all going to be dropped. Often they're going to be dropped when the native speaker is trying to say, I used to do it, right? When it's I was doing it, they're going to keep it. You're going to keep the hato. So hatos, all the hatos, hatas, they stay. But when you're saying used to, frequently in my experience, and that's tough about Gujarati because there are a lot of different dialects. Like as you go around the state of Gujarat, like the Gujarati changes in different places quite a bit often. So it's tough to give a sweeping statement, but based on my experience, yes, you can drop hato when you're trying to say used to. Makes sense in a way, right? It's kind of logical because if you have one sentence, right, like mucho alto, let's just go down here. Like if I wrote, let's erase this, right? Like if I wrote or said, for example, bear with me as I erase this. Okay. So if I said, for example, um, kato, kato. Yeah, again, remember, we're going to pronounce katoto. We write it kato hato, but we say katoto. Katoto. We know that this could mean, just if I don't give you any context, we know that it could mean I was eating, right? Or I used to eat. Actually, I can maybe add more to this. Let's actually make this a better sentence. Pela. Um, let's just say pela. Actually, I have a better one. Pela dud. Instead of kato, let's do pito. Like maybe let's say you developed a lactose intolerance over time, right? We can get rid of pela as well, actually. Let's just say dud. Right, let's just say dud. Pito hato, right? Dud pito to. It could mean I was drinking milk. Dud pito to. I was drinking milk, right? Or could mean I used to drink milk. The thing is, there's nothing in this sentence by itself that indicates which one of the two I'm saying. Like it's ambiguous, which is kind of annoying. So I guess it sort of makes sense to be like, okay, to differentiate, some people would say, dud pito, pela dud pito, right? So I used to, that automatically, if I get rid of this hato, especially if I had a pela, right? Now it has to mean number two. હું દૂધ પીતો પણ હવે હું નથી પી શકતો, right? But if I say હું પીતો હતો, right? Pito to or pito to, like basically I can't say હું દૂધ pito and have that mean number one. That doesn't work. That's never going to mean I was drinking milk. Okay. Cool. I'm just going to pause for a second. You're not going to see a pause, but I'm going to pause for a second. I just need to get a charger because my laptop is dying. So I'll be back in 1 second. All right. And we're back. To you, there's no real pause because, well, I just paused the recording. But anyway. So let's go to the top here. Scroll back up. So we've covered the conjugation rules. As always, grammar videos, and I know I've done a lot of grammar lately. Grammar can be a lot of information, and it can make it feel like your brain is full often. And so I will give you some exercises to practice, and we're going to do that right now. And then we'll do one big final recap, right, and try and keep it as simple as possible. So a couple ways to practice this. The first thing to know is that this kind of concept here is probably for the beginners a little bit tricky, a little bit trickier if you're like really on the beginner side of things, potentially. You won't have enough words and vocabulary to really use it, but possibly not, it really depends. But for intermediate level speakers and possibly even advanced, like definitely this is something that you can and probably should practice if it's not if you struggle with knowing if your sentences are correct when you're talking. So a couple ways to practice. Option one is write out, let's say, let's do 10 things you used to do. 10 things you used to do. Do the same thing. 10 things, do the same thing for, let's say, a friend. So 10 thing or family member, right? 10 thing a friend or family member used to do. That'll make you practice the same conjugations with a he and a she. Let's do the same with your grandma or grandpa. Something they used to do. Grandma or grandpa, you can pick. You just want someone older because that'll make you practice with like a tame, like a polite form. Does that make sense? Like this one here is going to make you practice like those and these, hatos and hatis. Right, this one's going to make you practice ta, like hatas and those ones. Grandpa. Hato, hati, hata. Yeah, there we go. So 10 of each. Another way to practice is describe, actually even better, set the scene for a story. What does that mean? Well, pretend, there we go, set the scene for a story. Pretend you've opened a book and you're on page 1. You got to do some world building. Where are we? What's going, like, where are we here? Are we outside? Is the sun shining? Are you in heaven? Are you in a fictional world? Are you in space? Are you on Mars? What's the air like? So set the scene for a story, right? That's, again, you'll need an intermediate level to do that for sure, right? Set the scene for a story, right? Another thing you can do as well, oops, there we go. Another way you can practice this too is if you search actually that's gonna be a bit trickier. Actually, no, that only works for French and Spanish, actually. I realized it wouldn't work for Gujarati. Actually, this will work for Gujarati. This is one you can do as well. You can find it, probably ChatGPT is the easiest for Gujarati. So go to chat.openai.com. This prompt, you might have to play with the prompts a little bit on this one, but you want to ask it something to the effect of this, something like, write me a short, probably 100-word. I think 100 words probably good. 100-word story for, now this is the part where I'm not sure what's going to be better. It's either you have two options of what to try and which one's easier. You can play with it. For, you have some options. Option 1, I'll use blue. Beginner ESL learners. That might be worth trying. I'm not sure because some of these might be too complicated, right? So you want to find something that'll be a little bit easier. So that might give you something easy. You can also try for a 5-year-old, or for actually even better, for a 3-year-old, like really young age. You could try for an emergent reader. And actually, yeah, emergent reader. Right? Or you can also try someone learning to read. So that'll keep it really simple. right? Someone learning to read. These are three options that probably should give you something. A fourth way to practice, this is another ChatGPT option. It's a bit convoluted, but because English doesn't really have these imperfect and preterite tenses exactly, to my knowledge, but you can do this. Again, this is the ChatGPT option. Chat.open AI.com. The prompt you're going to ask ChatGPT. Oh, by the way, with with number 3 up here, once you get the little story, you're going to translate it, right? Translate what you get, translate the story, right? You're going to translate whatever story you get to Gujarati and then have someone correct it, someone that you know, okay? The final option I'll give you here, this is a multi-prompt ask. So step 1, write me, you're going to tell ChatGPT this, write me, let's say 100 sentences in Spanish. Yes, I know I wrote Spanish, don't worry. That combine. I do this for lesson prep sometimes because I'm prepping a lesson and I want to get some exercises, and ChatGPT doesn't speak Gujarati very well at all, unfortunately. So if I'm looking for very specific types of exercises, I'll actually use a variation of these prompts to get what I'm looking for. Write me 100 sentences in Spanish that combine, or actually even better. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Actually, it'll work. That combine the preterite. Actually, I want to switch the order. That combine the imperfect plus preterite. Okay. Step 2. Step 2, you're going to say translate. So after it gives you those 100 sentences, you're going to say translate. So you're going to tell ChatGPT this. You're not going to do this. You're going to tell ChatGPT, translate those 100 sentences to English. Okay. Once you get those 100 sentences in English, you're now going to translate those into Gujarati. Okay. What's this number 3 and number 4, not so much 1 and 2, but these 3 and 4. So using the 2 ChatGPT activities, this is going to be a way to practice your imperfect and simple past. Because when we talk and when we write in Gujarati, we do actually need both of these. We do actually need both the imperfect and we need the simple past when we talk in the past. We actually end up using both quite often. So step 3 and 4 is a really good way to practice to practice both the imperfect and simple past in the past tense. Okay, in the past. This number 1 and number 2, 10 things you used to do and setting the scene for a story, like those 2 things, those are going to be that's going to be just imperfect. So maybe start with those 2 because that's directly related to this lesson. But if you have done the past tense, the preterite one, the past tense video, the simple past tense video, if you already watched that or went through that, and you're like, oh yeah, I want to really try and combine this with the imperfect, that is how to do that. These number 3 and 4 here. Okay? Whew, lots of grammar. I know it's not easy. Don't worry. Keep following along the videos. Keep doing the exercises. Keep practicing. You can get there. You will get there. I've seen it happen with many language learners over the past 15 years. So you can do it more than 15 years, actually. So you can do it. I believe in you. If you have any questions, you know where to go. I'll just type this on the screen for time's sake. Go to azrinthelanguagenerd.com/contact. You can email me from there. That's probably the best way to reach me, but also my social media platforms are there as well. Azren, thelanguagenerd.com/contact, AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/contact, and you can reach me. All right. Have a great day. Hope this is helpful. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Outro.